The alien fleet hung over the small frontier world like a vulture over carrion, its formation a casual sprawl rather than the disciplined spearhead of warriors expecting real resistance. Admiral Zorith lounged in his command throne, one clawed hand tracing idle circles over the armrest as his subordinates rattled off reports. Another colony, another day, another demonstration of what happened when humans strayed too far into the stars. His voice, thick with boredom, carried across the bridge. Minimal defenses. Their orbital guns are outdated, amusing even. I could order my broodlings to attack and still win. He gave a sharp, clicking laugh, and the officers around him joined with forced enthusiasm. To them, humanity was a nuisance at best, an occasional obstacle between trade lanes and resources. To Zorith, they were little more than primitive scavengers who had wandered too far. On the planet below, fires already clawed toward the night sky. Alien bombardment struck with clinical precision, tearing apart transport hubs and communications relays. Yet the humans did not scatter in mindless panic as other prey species had. Instead, convoys of civilians moved in grim order toward bunkers carved deep beneath the earth. Local defense militias didn't throw themselves at superior alien firepower. They melted into the ruins, patient waiting. Commander Elias Kane stood amid the smoke of a shattered defense tower, his uniform ash-streaked, voice low as he spoke into his comm, "Contain your fire. Make them think they've won already. Don't give them anything to measure us by." His men, young, tired, but steady, nodded silently. Kane's eyes lingered on the alien ships above, glinting like a string of false stars. His lips thinned into something between defiance and a grim smile. Let them think that. Hours later, the aliens pressed deeper into the planet's cities, their armored patrols swaggering through streets they believed already conquered. They laughed at the scraps of resistance, a single sniper round here, a carefully set explosive there. The Admiral found it quaint, nothing more than insects lashing out before inevitable extermination. His reports called it low-level harassment, nothing resembling military cohesion. But Zorith's first officer frowned at the precision of those small attacks. Supplies targeted, relay stations cut, patrols ambushed at choke points. "Admiral," he ventured carefully, "they fight differently than expected." Zorith waved a dismissive claw. "They are cattle with sharpened sticks. This is desperation." Yet in the back of his mind, a splinter of unease stirred. The moment of arrogance that would define the war came days later. Flushed with success, convinced humanity had no central defense worth the name, the alien command voted to strike Earth itself. To Zorith, it was the perfect symbol. Crush their homeworld, and the scattered colonies would fall in line like dominoes. "We will burn their cradle," he declared, voice thundering with certainty, "and the rest of the species will crawl back into caves." His bridge erupted in approving clicks. The fleet descended on Earth expecting screams, chaos, and surrender. They found instead a planet strangely silent, its orbital defenses powered down, its comms channels eerily clear. Alien dropships knifed through the atmosphere, Marines pouring into megacities with weapons ready. What greeted them was not terror but empty streets, sealed bunkers, and shadows that moved with uncanny coordination. Zorith's initial amusement gave way to faint irritation. Why are they hiding? Where are their leaders, their armies? His subordinates suggested that humanity had already fled in disgrace. Yet, as footage streamed back from ground troops, one detail unsettled him. The humans who remained did not weep or beg. They moved with purpose, guiding civilians into shelters, setting charges with meticulous care. They looked less like prey and more like soldiers buying time. In the underground command complex beneath Washington, General Helena Stroud studied the incoming feeds with a soldier's calm. Around her, staff worked in silence, fingers gliding over consoles. She raised her hand, and the room stilled. Phase 1 complete. They've taken the bait. A ripple of restrained satisfaction moved through the officers. For decades, Earth had planned for this possibility, not with fanfare, not with grand declarations, but with quiet, ruthless preparation. In the streets above, alien Marines marched into a seemingly abandoned district. Then, with a single coded pulse, the district erupted in synchronized detonations. Towers collapsed in controlled demolitions, cutting patrols off from one another. Hidden railguns fired from concealed bunkers, their rounds piercing alien armor with surgical precision. Not a wasted shot, not a wild scream, only the cold efficiency of a species that had studied war for centuries. For the first time, Zorith leaned forward in his throne, eyes narrowing. The reports were too consistent, too deliberate. This was no scattered resistance. This was strategy. His first officer hesitated, then murmured the thought neither wanted to speak loud. "Admiral, what if they wanted us here?" The words hung in the air like a curse. On Earth, General Stroud clasped her hands behind her back, gaze fixed on the holographic map where alien icons pressed deeper into her trap. "They think we're cornered. Let them believe it one more day." She lowered her voice, almost reverent. "Then we show them what patience buys." Zoreth watched the latest battle feeds, unease coiling in his chest. The humans weren't breaking. They weren't even straining. His claws tapped against the armrest as a gnawing realization spread through him. Perhaps this war wasn't a routine campaign he had promised his superiors. Perhaps in their arrogance, they had stepped onto ground that was not prey's territory, but a predator's lair. And in the silence between incoming reports, Admiral Zoreth, for the first time, wondered if he had made a mistake. This section comes in at around 1,000 words and introduces Admiral Zoreth, alien antagonist, arrogant, dismissive, slowly uneasy. Commander Elias Kane, frontier officer, calm, disciplined, foreshadowing hidden strength. General Helena Stroud, Earth strategist, represents humanity's quiet, calculated patience. Conflict, aliens see humans as weak prey, but Earth reveals discipline and strategy, setting the stage for the Six-Day War. Admiral Zoreth's fleet emerged from Earth's night side in a loose orbit, their hulls glittering with the reflected light of the planet below. He expected the sight of a species trembling in its cradle. Instead, the surface shimmered with a calm defiance he could not name. His officers murmured updates, small human skirmishes here, scattered missile launches there, but none of it suggested the chaos he anticipated. Zoreth forced a smile, thin and sharp. They resist with teeth dulled by age. Soon they will learn futility. Deep beneath the Atlantic, in a cavernous command hall shielded by kilometers of rock and ocean, General Helena Stroud observed the alien fleet's movements. Her expression revealed little, though her jaw was set with the weight of decades of preparation. "They believe we are disorganized," she said, her voice low but carrying. "Let them. Tonight, they will see we were never prey." At her side, Commander Elias Kane stood silent, his uniform still scarred by ash from a colony's fall. His eyes, however, burned with something harder than grief, resolve sharpened into steel. Signals passed invisibly between Earth's silent defense stations. Across continents, bunkers that had slumbered for generations flickered awake. Hidden satellites rotated, their optics shifting toward precise coordinates. Stroud raised one hand, and the order carried across encrypted channels. Phase 2. Activate Jericho. In orbit, alien patrols reported sudden interference, bursts of encrypted noise flooding their sensors. They tried to dismiss it as primitive jamming, but then a fleet of human ships appeared where none had been before, sliding out of darkened pockets in low orbit, their engines silent until the instant they struck. Precision missile volleys lashed out, not randomly but with uncanny intent, tearing through the joints of alien formations. On Zoreth's bridge, alarm shrieked. He gripped the armrests of his throne, claws biting into metal. How? His fleet had mapped every human station, every shipyard, every orbital platform. Yet these vessels moved as if they had been waiting in shadows all along, biding their time. His first officer's voice quavered. "Admiral, it was no defense, it was a lure." Human ships did not surge forward in chaotic desperation. They advanced with chilling discipline, cutting escape routes, isolating ships, striking only when outcomes were certain. The alien fleet, so accustomed to overwhelming force, suddenly found itself blind, severed, and hunted. Stroud watched from her command hall, her tone calm as she received reports. They are learning the difference between arrogance and supremacy. To her staff, her restraint was both terrifying and reassuring. She never celebrated each alien loss, never raised her voice. Her only concern was precision. No wasted effort. Every strike counts. We will show them what patience looks like when it snaps. On the alien flagship, Zoreth ordered countermeasures, but his commands carried the thin edge of doubt. The enemy had been underestimated, but this was something else. He called for intelligence archives on humanity, and fragments of intercepted data flickered to life before him. At first, the images were almost laughable. Grainy recordings of primitive wars, steel tanks crawling across muddy plains, soldiers charging trenches with rifles. Yet as the files played, Zoratha's amusement faltered. The sheer scale of bloodshed, the relentless innovations, the willingness to destroy entire cities to claim victory, it gnawed at him. One image lingered, a mushroom cloud rising above a flattened landscape, a whole world's breath stolen in an instant. He felt his throat tighten, mandibles clicking softly. His officer, silent at his shoulder, finally whispered, "They have been killing each other like this for centuries. And surviving." Zorath dismissed the feed with a sharp gesture, but the unease remained, an itch beneath his skin. He stared out at the void where human fleets maneuvered with precision beyond their supposed capabilities. Every instinct told him this was no accident. Humanity had not stumbled into resistance. They had prepared for this war as if they had known it was coming all along. Meanwhile, Kane's boots echoed through the underground corridors as he visited squads awaiting redeployment. Many of his soldiers bore fresh wounds, others silent grief, yet none looked broken. One young trooper met his gaze with eyes too old for his ears. "Sir," the boy asked, "why don't they understand? We didn't want this." Kane placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Because predators only see weakness until you bite back." His words hung in the dim light, not as comfort, but as truth. Above, Earth's orbital grid awoke in full. Concealed stations rotated their barrels, and in perfect sequence, beams of coherent light knifed across the void. Alien cruisers split open silently, their glowing debris tumbling into the black. What should have been a display of terror instead looked like execution, cold, efficient, inevitable. Zoratha's chest tightened as he realized what chilled him most. Humanity was not fighting for survival with frantic abandon. They fought with the steadiness of surgeons, as if they had rehearsed every move. He leaned forward, his voice low, rasping. "We walked into their design." The bridge fell into silence at his words. His crew exchanged nervous glances, the certainty of conquest eroding into fear. For the first time, their admiral's confidence wavered, and the void around them felt no longer like conquered territory, but an endless trap. On Earth, Stroud clasped her hands behind her back and exhaled slowly. "They will begin to fear us now," she said, not with pride, but with cold finality. Kane, standing at her side, looked upward as if he could see through the stone and ocean above. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "Good. Let them understand what happens when patience runs dry." In the alien flagship's silent bridge, Admiral Zorath fixed his gaze on the swirling battle outside, the images of human history echoing in his mind like a drumbeat. For the first time in his long career, the thought he could not voice pressed heavy on his chest. They might lose. And worse, if they did, the galaxy would never be the same. This section is 1,000 words focused tightly on. Zorath realizing humanity is not prey, but a trapper. Stroud unveiling Earth's hidden preparation. Kane showing personal resolve, giving human vulnerability and strength. Ending with Zoratha's first true fear, pushing the tension upward. The high chamber of the Carathian Council blazed with light, yet the atmosphere felt dimmed by unease. Representatives from across the Empire filled the tiers, their voices sharp, overlapping, urgent. News of Earth's sudden resistance had spread faster than any fleet could travel. Some counselors scoffed at the reports, calling them exaggerated tales spun from cowardice. Others sat stiff, antennae twitching, unwilling to admit the creeping suspicion gnawing at them. Admiral Zorath stood in the center, his posture rigid though his eyes betrayed strain. "They were supposed to fold," one counselor barked. "A backwater species clinging to dirt and water. Your retreat makes us look weak." Zoratha's mandibles clicked in frustration. "You misunderstand. I did not retreat. I preserved what remains of our fleet after they sprung their trap. Humanity has been preparing for this war longer than we imagined." Laughter rolled through the chamber, mocking and dismissive. A counselor leaned forward, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You claim primitives lured us into battle? Perhaps your pride cannot accept that you failed." The insult cut, but Zorath did not rise to it. He let silence hold for a moment, then spoke with a weight that pressed the chamber still. "They fight with patience, with strategy. Their cities were not undefended, they were bait. Their orbital silence was not weakness, it was calculation. And when their weapons struck, it was with precision that rivaled our own." His voice grew low, almost reverent. "We thought them prey. They are predators who have turned their gaze outward." The chamber muttered, the air splitting between disbelief and dread. One elder counselor, long respected, gave a rare admission: we underestimated them. But her words were drowned by shouts demanding a renewed offensive, demanding blood to wash away shame. Back on Earth, General Stroud paced slowly before her command display. Icons of alien ships marked in red blinked out one by one as coordinated strikes unfolded. Yet her face betrayed no triumph. She knew what came next. Victory in defense meant nothing if humanity could not seize the momentum. At her side, Commander Kane leaned forward, watching the map like a man reading his own future. "They're rattled," he said. "Press now and we break them." Stroud's eyes flicked toward him. "And if we overreach?" Kane's jaw tightened. "Then we finally see if all our preparations mean what we hoped." Silence settled, heavy but not uncertain. Stroud gave the order. Across the globe, launch bays opened and warships emerged like blades unsheathed. For decades, these fleets had been hidden, training in deep orbit, masked by stealth systems perfected in secrecy. Now they moved with chilling synchronization, slipping into wormhole corridors humanity had mapped in silence while the galaxy ignored them. Zoratha's fleet reeled as human ships materialized not only before them, but behind, cutting supply lines, surrounding stragglers. He watched in disbelief as entire flotillas vanished into wormholes only to strike hours later across different sectors, their timing impossible to predict. He ordered countermaneuvers, but every command seemed already anticipated, every weakness already known. On the bridge of his flagship, a junior officer whispered, barely audible, "It is as if they rehearsed this war." Zorath turned sharply, intending to silence the comment, but the truth in it lodged deep. The humans had been rehearsing. Not against the Empire, but against themselves. Centuries of war carved into their bones, each conflict a brutal teacher. They had made survival an art form, and now the galaxy was their stage. In orbit above Mars, Kane stood at a viewport, watching human fleets cut through alien lines with surgical precision. He thought of the soldiers he'd lost on the frontier, of the families buried in silence beneath alien bombardments. A part of him wanted triumph, a cry of vengeance shouted into the void. Yet what rose in him instead was something quieter, heavier. Pride, yes, but tempered with sorrow. They had not asked for this war, but once it began, they could only finish it. Reports streamed in, alien flotillas shattered, communications in disarray, surrender signals intercepted but ignored by commanders too proud to yield. Within 3 days, the momentum had reversed entirely. Humanity no longer defended Earth. Humanity was advancing. Zorath studied the collapsing map of his forces, his throat constricted by something he had not felt in decades: fear. He could see the pattern forming, the noose tightening. Every instinct told him this was no longer a battle. It was an execution written with precision and patience. He thought of the Council's laughter, their arrogance, and realized they had doomed themselves the moment they dismissed his warnings. As another of his cruisers erupted into flame outside the viewport, Zorath spoke quietly to no one in particular. "We thought them children. But they are the oldest kind of enemy, those who never stop until the war is done." His voice cracked as he said it, though he did not allow his crew to hear the fracture fully. On Earth, Stroud received word of the alien retreat collapsing into chaos. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with steel. "No celebration," she ordered. "This is not victory. This is inevitability. And inevitability must be carried through to the end." Kane exhaled, shoulders heavy, his gaze locked on the battle map. "Then the end comes swiftly," he murmured. Above him, fleets shifted into final formations, wormholes opening like silent jaws across the stars. The war that began as an invasion had transformed into something else entirely. Humanity was no longer defending its cradle. Humanity was reaching outward, and nothing in the galaxy seemed capable of stopping them. The void flickered with burning wreckage, and the silence between detonations carried a weight no song of triumph could match. It was the silence of predators who had waited too long to bare their teeth. And in that silence, Admiral Zorath finally understood. The 6-day war would not be remembered as humanity's defense. It would be remembered as the Empire's undoing. This section, 1,000 words, pushes the war from defense to domination, while deepening. Zorath's fear and recognition of humanity's true nature. Stroud's relentless restraint, showing control over triumph. Kane's pride mixed with sorrow, grounding human strength in sacrifice. The Empire's lines fractured like brittle glass. Whole flotillas vanished into silence, their commanders refusing to respond to Zoratha's desperate summons. Sectors that had sworn eternal loyalty abandoned the fight, their garrisons collapsing at the mere rumor of approaching human fleets. 6 days earlier, the galaxy had watched a minor war begin. Now it watched an empire unravel. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zorath stared at the tactical display, its red icons thinning by the hour. Every instinct screamed to flee, but there was nowhere left to run. Humanity's ships were not pursuing in rage, they were advancing with the calm inevitability of a tide, sealing every escape corridor. He could feel the morale of his crew breaking around him. Some whispered of surrender, others of mutiny. Their voices grated against him, but he did not silence them. He could not. "Admiral," his first officer said, his tone frayed. "If we continue, there will be nothing left to command." Zoratha's mandibles tightened. He thought of the council that had mocked his warnings, of their laughter echoing across the chamber while he spoke of humanity's precision. Now those voices were gone, their worlds defenseless, their fleets consumed. Pride demanded defiance, but survival pressed a heavier truth into his chest. He had led his people into the jaws of something far older, far hungrier than any of them had imagined. On Earth, General Stroud stood before her command table, the last fragments of battle feeds flowing past her eyes. Human fleets pressed deeper into alien space with the same steady rhythm they had maintained since the first strikes. There was no celebration, no cheer, only the low murmur of officers relaying confirmations. She placed her palms flat on the table, feeling the weight of what they had unleashed. "We can end this now," she said. Her voice carried not triumph, but grim responsibility. Commander Kane lingered near the edge of the chamber, his posture heavy, his face shadowed by exhaustion. The boy he had comforted days ago haunted his mind, along with every soldier who would never see the war's end. "End it how?" he asked quietly. "By taking everything they have? By breaking them so badly they'll never rise again." His tone was sharp, not out of rebellion, but out of raw fatigue. Stroud's gaze turned toward him, her eyes like iron. "We end it by ensuring it never begins again. If they remain unbroken, we will fight this war forever. If they learn, truly learn, they may yet live alongside us." Her words carried no promise of mercy, only of necessity. Zorath opened a comm channel, his image flickering across human screens. His face bore none of the arrogance that had marked him at the war's beginning. His shoulders were bowed, his voice hollowed by defeat. "General Stroud," he began, forcing the words past a throat that burned with humiliation, "the Empire surrenders. I surrender. Spare my people what remains." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. Stroud studied him without blinking, her features impassive. When she finally spoke, her voice was colder than any weapon. "We did not come to your worlds. You came to ours. You expected prey. You found predators. Remember that." She let the silence hang like a blade before adding, "Your fleets will disarm. Your council will submit to oversight. You will serve as liaison between our worlds. Fail, and the galaxy will know how little patience we keep now." Zorath lowered his head. The humiliation tasted like ash, but beneath it, a strange clarity formed. Humanity had not sought vengeance. They sought control. They had no interest in trophies or conquest. They wanted permanence. And permanence was far more terrifying. Kane watched the exchange from behind Stroud, the bitterness in his chest warring with something he could not yet name. He thought of humanity's long history of tearing itself apart, of the countless times they had clawed victory from ruin. Now, united by necessity, they had turned those same instincts outward. "We've won," he said softly, though it felt more like an accusation than a triumph. Stroud's reply came without hesitation. "No, we've endured. Winning implies a finish line. This only begins what comes next." Her gaze shifted back to the maps, already expanding beyond the Empire's fractured borders. The alien empires' collapse rippled outward. Worlds once proud of their dominion sent messages of surrender before human fleets even arrived. Armadas powered down without firing a shot. The legend of invincible conquerors had died in less than a week, and in its place rose a new truth. Humanity, patient and quiet for so long, had finally revealed its teeth. Zorath returned to his ruined capital not as a savior, but as a symbol of submission. His people watched him walk among them with shame burning in their eyes, yet he held his head high enough to disguise the weight pressing on him. They whispered of extermination, of human vengeance, but he knew better. Humanity had no need to destroy what it already owned. They ruled not through terror, but through inevitability. In the quiet after the war, Kane walked the blasted ruins of a coastal city where alien marines had once landed. Children played among the rubble, their laughter thin but unbroken. He paused, feeling the ache of both loss and pride in his chest. A young soldier approached him, saluting sharply. "Sir," she said, "orders for redeployment came through. We're moving out again." "To where?" Kane asked, though the answer already rested heavy on his shoulders. The soldier hesitated, then said simply, "Out there." Night fell over Earth, but in orbit the skies burned with the light of fleets assembling, no longer for defense, but for the uncertain frontier ahead. Humanity had shown the galaxy what happened when patience snapped, and the lesson would not be forgotten. In her private quarters, Stroud stood alone, staring at the planet below. Her reflection gazed back from the viewport, stern, unyielding. "We never wanted this war," she whispered, her words carried away by the hum of the ship. "But once it came, we could not afford half measures. Now the burden is ours." She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with renewed steel. "And the galaxy will learn what it means when we do not stop." Far beyond Earth, whispers spread among distant stars. The Empire had fallen, not to a coalition, not to a rival, but to a species long dismissed as fragile. The quiet ones from the blue planet had risen, and the galaxy would never sleep soundly again. Admiral Zoreth, once conqueror, now servant, sat alone in his quarters, the echoes of the war haunting him. He remembered the laughter of the council, the certainty of supremacy, and the silence of human fleets moving with surgical inevitability. He closed his eyes, and for the first time, he prayed, not for victory, but for coexistence. The war had lasted 6 days. Its shadow would last forever. This section, 1180 words, brings the story to its climax and resolution. Zoreth surrenders, forced into a role beneath humanity. Stroud cements humanity's calm, inevitable dominance. Kane embodies the cost, victory laced with sorrow. The conclusion shifts to a chilling permanence. Humanity did not win a war. They ended an order and began a new era.